Hello everyone. This video is being provided by the American Student Achievement Institute, and it's designed for schools participating in ASA's Redesigning School Counseling Initiative. The purpose of this video is to introduce the College and Career Readiness Student Survey. So to begin with, the College and Career Readiness Survey is actually two surveys. The first one we call the Goals Survey. It asks students questions about their future plans and if they've made targeted student choices in areas that we know to be related to academic success. And then the second survey is the Root Cause Survey. And on that survey, we're asking questions about the students' guidance needs. In other words, what knowledge do they have, or what knowledge do they lack in the areas of academic, career, and social emotional development. On the Root Cause Survey, we also ask questions about students' counseling needs, and we specifically ask those questions in terms of which social emotional issues do the students feel are interfering with their own individual learning. And then the final kind of question on the Root Cause Survey is questions about the students' perceptions of their school counselor. Do they think their counselor is knowledgeable? Do they think their counselor cares about them? So two surveys, and then there's two question sets on the first Goals Survey, and there's three question sets on the Root Cause Survey. Okay, and then let's look at how this data will be used. In the RSC process, again, in November, December, January, we are collecting data, and all of the data that we're collecting in the survey will be used in our fourth meeting with your council as we're looking at the root causes. So what we will be asking your council is, why aren't more students making our targeted choices? And we'll suggest that usually kids don't make good choices because they're not motivated. And many times in school, they're not motivated because they don't have post-secondary or career goals that make their education meaningful. It may be that they're not making sound choices because of a lack of knowledge, or a lack of social and emotional health, or a lack of understanding about the counselor's skills and attributes. You know, the counselors can be there to help, but if the students don't understand that the counselors have skills and knowledge, the students might not be apt to go talk to their counselor. So the Root Cause Survey and the Goals Survey will help your council answer this question: why aren't more students making our targeted choices? So let's begin by looking specifically at the Goals Survey. And again, that's the survey that looks at future plans and student choices. So here's a couple of examples of future plan questions. What do you plan to do during the first year after high school? And this is a real schools data, by the way. And then what type of high school diploma do you expect to receive? So that would give your council some idea of students' future plans. Here are some of the student choice examples of the student choice questions. Do you almost always turn your homework in on time? Were you absent fewer than 10 times this year? Were you sent to the office? These are all student engagement questions, which is something that when students are successful at school, they tend to be engaged. So we want to ask students about that. And then here are other student choice examples. Did you visit a college campus this year? We know that students that progress in their education after high school tend to do that, even in elementary school. Did you complete the Indiana College Cost Estimator? That tends to be something that we ask of, that is something that we ask of high school students. Did your parents attend a program about financial aid this year? So all of the questions are age level appropriate, so we wouldn't see the question about financial aid on a third grade survey. That would only be on the high school survey. Okay, so now in those goals survey, when we're reporting out the student plans and student choices, there are two different kinds of reports, and I wanted you to see these reports so you can see how you're going to be able to use the data. So the first type of report is what we call student group data. So this data will give you the percentage of all students who answered questions specific ways. Then you'll see in a minute we'll also break down the data so that you can see what your free and reduced lunch students said or your third graders said. So I think it's important for you to understand who can access the group data. And there's 3 columns there. You can see there's the public, there's school counselors, and then there's Indiana colleges. So the public data, the only thing the public can see is the aggregated group data for your plans and choice questions and for the guidance needs. So the public is only able to determine what your students' plans are for the future, what kinds of choices they're making in areas that lend themselves to academic success, and then what do they know about academic, career, and social emotional development. The other 3 question sets, their counseling needs, perception of the counselors, that is not available to the public. School counselors who have a username and password can access all of the group data. And then Indiana colleges, when we are running a program where colleges can access the data, which is not currently, but colleges only have access to plans and choices and guidance needs questions. So, okay, so especially on the public with your counseling needs, we just thought that might be a little bit sensitive. In what do your students think about their counselors? We thought that might be a little sensitive, so that is not available to the public. It's only available to the school counselor who has a username and password. Okay, so here's how the data is reported out. So this question is, do you almost always turn in your homework in on time? This is a rural school's data. This is a small, fairly small rural school. And we can see that among all students, 88% said that they almost always turn their homework in on time. We give you the raw data too, so you understand what that percentage means. So in this case, the school surveyed 623 students, and 546 agreed with that statement. On the other hand, if we look down to who said no, we've got 77 students in that raw data that said that they do not almost always turn their homework in on time. So you may be wondering, gosh, what is it about those 77 kids? What do they have in common? Is it across the board? Is it a certain grade level? Is it just the free and reduced lunch kids? So the computer will allow you to get disaggregated data reports. Here's the same school, same question. This time we've disaggregated the results by grade level. And we can see that, the seniors tend to turn in their homework on time, or report that they return it in on time, a little bit higher than the freshmen, but not a lot. There's not a big discrepancy here, 6% discrepancy. So if I were the counselor in this building, I wouldn't be focusing on one grade level because I'm kind of seeing across the board on that. Then let's look at the lunch program. We might think that, that free and reduced lunch or paid lunch kids tend to turn their homework in more than the other group. But as I look at this data, we only have a 4% difference. So again, I'm not, if I were the counselor in this building, I'm not thinking there's a big gap here in lunch program data. But when I look at the typical grades drilled down, and during the survey we asked the students, what are the typical grades you get on your report cards? And here I see some mega differences. For students who tend to get A's and B's on their report card, that 99% of them said they turned their homework in on time. When students get B's and C's, 85%. But if I go down to students who report getting D's and F's, only 18% of those students say that they turn their homework in on time. Well, 18%. So if we look in the next row down, we can see that on the D and F students, there's 11 of them, and 9 of them said that they didn't turn in their homework on time often. So if I jump back a column and look at C and D students, I have another 24. So I've got 33 kids who are telling me that they don't always, turn their homework in on time. And those are the kids who are tending to get, poor grades. So now I might be thinking, oh my gosh, who are those kids? If I just knew who they were, I could do some kind of targeted guidance with them, or maybe talk with their parents, or I could really focus in on those 9 or those 33 if I look at C's and D's as well, if I just knew who those kids were. So we have a tool. It's only available to schools, not available to the public, called the Student List Generator. And what we can do is we can say to the computer, tell me who those 33 kids are, or tell me who those 9 kids are, if we're just looking at D's and F's. So who can create a student list? Only the counselors and colleges. It's on a very limited basis, and the only things you can get student names for are the questions about students' future plans, and their student choices and their guidance needs. We can never, even in the school counselors, they can never get individual student names for any of the questions about the student assistance needs or the perceptions of counselors. This is really to protect the counselors and to protect our staff as well. We never want someone to say, oh my gosh, if so-and-so had just picked up on that data from the survey, maybe we could have prevented that running away, or a suicide even, or something like that. So we just to protect everybody, we did not make the individual student data available on the student assistance needs questions. And then same thing in the perceptions of the counselors. We didn't want anybody to say, oh, well, no wonder that counselor didn't do this for that student. That counselor knew that student said that the counselor didn't like him, or the counselor didn't care about kids. So we're very limited on which questions you can get data for, and also, or student names for, and also when you can get the student names, it's limited, and here's how we limited that. The students have to opt into this service. So during the survey, there's a question that says, would you like your school counselor to provide you with individualized information about how to plan, prepare, and pay for college? So, and then we go on to say, by answering yes, that gives ASA permission to release to licensed educators employed by your school district your responses to the questions for the purpose of providing student guidance, targeted student guidance. And then the second opt-in question is similar, but this time we're saying, would you like Indiana colleges? And again, this is not a service we're providing for Indiana colleges right now, but the question's still in there in case that we ever start doing that again. But in this time, the students are giving us permission to release only their future plans data, their student choice data, and their guidance needs data to Indiana colleges. So kids have to opt in order for their names to be released. Okay, so when you go into the student list generator, I just want to show you how this works real quickly. First thing you do is you have to write the purpose of your query. That's a requirement of FERPA when you go into a student file. So you write in the purpose of the query, and then this query is going to be used. Will it be used to send emails to students, yes or no? To send a postal mail to students, yes or no? To send a postal mail to parents, yes or no? So a little bit of FERPA questions in the beginning. Then on the next screen, you're asked to select the student characteristics. So you can say, I want to see all the names of Hispanic students who answered a specific question in a specific way, or I want to see what the free reduced lunch kids said, or the kids whose parents had never been to college, or kids who get D's and F's, or males. So again, I think this could really align well with your school improvement plan. If your school improvement plan is focused on closing an achievement gap, this might be really helpful data to help you understand why a specific student group is not achieving at a higher level. So, okay, so you're going to pick the student characteristics, and then you'll say, and these are the questions that I want to look at and responses that I'm looking for. So you might say, show me the names and the contact information for 9th grade males who are expecting or who are not sure what kind of Indiana diploma they're going to seek. Or give me the names of sixth grade students or sixth grade males or his sixth grade free and reduced lunch students who have not enrolled in a college savings plan. So you just kind of tell the computer what kind of list you want to create, and then the computer will spit out an email list for you. So I just put all, I use the same email address over and over in here, but just to show you what it would look like. You can tell the computer to put commas between the email addresses, or you can tell the computer to put semicolons there. So you can create an email list, and then you can also create an Excel file. This is really good for doing student mailing labels. If you, you may have said, give me a list of students who are planning to go to college, get A's and B's on the report card, but are not thinking about taking an advanced placement course. And then you could send their parents an invitation to come to some special program where you're going to talk about AP at school. One other way, I think, another way that I've seen a lot of counselors use this is, I'm going to go back to the email list. They'll say to the computer, give me a list of students who are interested in Purdue University. And then when the Purdue rep comes to the school, they'll just send all the students an email, that says the Purdue rep's going to be here on Tuesday at 3 or Tuesday at 1, come to the office to get a pass if you'd like to meet with them. So, okay. So that's the student list generator. I do want to point out that we have had all of the way that we handle student data reviewed by an attorney who specializes in FERPA, and we have a statement from them that says that our practices are in compliance with FERPA and applicable Indiana code. Okay, so that was the goals survey. Now we'll look at the second survey, the root cause survey. So this survey is asking students about their guidance needs, their counseling needs, and their perceptions of the school counselor. So here's some examples of guidance needs questions. Can you describe, and these are all knowledge-based, can you describe the level of education that is required for jobs that interest you? Do you know how to find jobs that match your interests? Can you demonstrate effective practices for interviewing? So, the students will answer these questions, and you can see, on this one, they're pretty much all running the same. 50 that are saying yes, 56%, 63, 45. In a school that has paid a lot of attention to these areas, this number is going to be 90, 89, 93. But then occasionally you'll go through and you'll see, here's a 56, a 63, and then all of a sudden there's a 13. And when you see kind of a huge gap like that, you know that something's really off here. This is one in my building. When we first started surveying students, I think I mentioned in one of our workshops that we had a financial aid program that we thought was really teaching kids about financial aid. And when we looked at our survey results, that was the one where all of a sudden we had this really low percentages of kids that said yes, and we thought, well, that program didn't work. So then we had to go back and reinvent the wheel on that. So those are guidance needs. Counseling needs, controlling my anger is making it difficult for me to succeed at school. Fighting, hitting is making it difficult for me to succeed at school. And you can see that all of these, because we are school counselors rather than community counselors, the focus is on looking at social emotional issues that are interfering with the student's ability to succeed at school. And again, this data is only available to the counselors. And then perception of the counselors, does your school counselor care about you? Do they have high goals for you? Do they believe that all students are important? We also ask them about your knowledge levels, if you're knowledgeable about careers and post-secondary education options and that kind of thing. This data is only available to counselors. I think I mentioned that. The other thing is that this data is also aligned with the licensing standards in Indiana for school counselors. So that's kind of where we got the content for these questions. Okay, so on the root cause surveys, there is no individual student reports. This is not part of the student list generator. So the only reports that we provide on the root cause survey data is the group reports and not the individualized student data reports. And again, because we don't want counselors to be able to identify an individual student who might report a social and emotional concern. And again, that's just to protect the counselors. So, okay, so that's the survey and how we're going to use it. It will help when your council sets goals. It will help when your council looks at its root causes. Now let's talk about how to administer the survey. So the students in grades 3 through 12 take an online survey. Students in grades K through 2 take a teacher-read survey. We're looking for 95% of the students in your building, and I'll give you some tips on how to make that happen. And then the survey window, the survey normally doesn't open up until March 15th, but there will be an early administration for the schools that are first-year RSC schools. So your survey window is January 2nd to January 29th. In that time period, we need to get all of your students to a computer to take the survey. So here is, we think, the easiest way to get all students to a computer, and there have been, hundreds of thousands of students who have, well, just over 100,000 students who have taken the survey. So we know it's possible to get all the kids to the computer. It just takes some planning. So the option, so a couple things. One, the first note here, not all students have to survey at the same time. So you may decide to survey your freshmen at the beginning of that block and your seniors at the end of the block, or your third graders one week and your fourth graders the next week. And it also really helps for you to convey the value of the survey, how the results are going to be used to your teachers and the administrators to get their buy-in. I think that's really kind of important. Okay, so one way to survey every student real easily is just to give all of your teachers the survey website, which is asasurveys.org, and then instructions, which we'll provide for you, and then the grade level codes the computer will spit out. And then you're just asking your teachers to please, in that multi-week time block, to survey the students in their second period class or in their homeroom or whatever. As a different option, you could bring 20 to 30 students at a time into the computer lab over several days and get them all surveyed that way. So we would really, really like you to survey 95% of the kids, and here's why. If you get data that you don't particularly like and people want to not believe it, if you haven't surveyed a high number of students, people will be able to say, well, it wasn't really a random survey. If you survey every student, there's no question about that. So we really, really encourage you to survey 95% of your student body, and our staff will actively encourage you to do that. If you're not able to do that for some reason, contact us and we'll talk about some alternatives. But we really would like to focus on that 95%. Okay. Then we will provide for you a set of teacher instructions. And so you can see there's an introduction, there's instructions on how to administer the test, what to say to students, and then what the task is, what to ask students to do. And then we also provide for the teachers here some frequently asked questions that the students may ask them. So we give them answers so that they know ahead of time if this comes up, what they can respond with. Okay, and then for the K2 teachers, there's a different set of instructions for them. Basically, we're asking students to put their heads down on the desk. The teachers will read a survey item to the students, and then the students will raise their hand. There are no social emotional questions on this, and there's no perceptions of the school counselor on this survey because this is a confidential survey. This is not a confidential survey because the teacher is administering it. So the only thing we're asking students on this K2 survey is, what do you know? or what have you done? Did you save money for college? Did you play in the sports team? Did you do your best at school? Did you read outside of school? We're asking them about their future plans and a little bit about their student choices. I have given this survey to my preschool grandchildren, and some of it, they, like when I asked them, do you plan to go to college? They they kind of knew what college was, but were kind of fuzzy. But that was really interesting to kind of see, at that level, do the kids have a concept that school doesn't, end after 12th grade? And yeah, so if the kids are fuzzy with some of this, that's okay. We're just trying to kind of learn what they're fuzzy about, what they're not fuzzy about, what they, just how they respond to the survey. So, okay. So this is 2 surveys. You have an option to give them both at the same time or in 2 sittings. We've seen schools do it both ways, and the decision is usually based on how much time you have. So you probably have picked up already that this is a quick survey to take per item. Did you help one of your friends this year? Yes or no? Did you participate in tutoring outside the classroom this year? Yes or no? So we observed people and students taking the survey, and it usually took it took them an average of 7 to 10 seconds per survey item. So there are a lot of questions, but because of the way the survey is designed, students can get through them very, very quickly. So here's how many questions there are, and you can see, for 12th grader, they're looking at 68 questions on the student choice survey and 90 questions on the root cause survey. But if you look at so few seconds per item, this is how it ends up. And even at, we estimated 15 seconds, which is, I think, more time, much more time than students actually need per item. But at 15 seconds per item, it would take 17 minutes for a senior to take the goal survey. It would take 23 minutes for a senior to take the root cause survey. So, for most schools, you could fit both of those surveys into one class period. But when you're setting this up, you probably want to tell teachers you have to get started right away. So, and then of course, we can look down at at the 4th grade survey. There's just, 23 items total on theirs. So, I'm sorry, 23 minutes total on theirs. So, okay, so that's the time. We are going to redesign the survey slightly to take off some of the questions that were only on there for the purposes of the former Gold Star School Counseling Award. But it's not going to be a lot of questions coming off. So as you're planning time to take the survey in the survey window, I would plan on this much time. Okay, and how to set up the survey. Okay, when you go into the computer, and I'll show you this in a moment, the first thing you're going to do is to determine which question sets to put on your school survey. So the survey plans and choices questions, these are required, but the rest of these questions are optional. So one way you could save time is to only ask your students to take the plans and choices questions. However, when we get to the root cause section, you're not going to have data that I think you'd want to have to help you figure out why kids aren't making the choices we want them to make. So our strong recommendation is that you put all 3 optional question sets into your school's survey. So you just, when you go into the section, you just check off the survey sets that you want to include. Okay, as soon as you've done that and saved, then the computer will show you a screen that lists your survey codes. And there's a separate survey code for each grade level, and within each grade level there's a survey code for the goal survey and then a different code for the root cause survey. When a student goes into our system and they enter their code, that tells our computer this is a third grader from your school. And it will give them the survey that you've designed for your school with the question sets that you want. And then it will also, after they take the survey, it'll aggregate all that data into your school's data. So it's really important that these codes are accurate. You'll notice that each grade level, the code starts with the number of the grade level. That we hope will help you from keeping them, help you not mix them up. And then the other thing is that if you are giving both surveys, you would, at the same time, you would need to give students two codes, tell them put in one code, take that survey, and then put in a different code and take that survey. Okay. When the students log in, they're going to asaisurveys.org, and they're going to put that code in and then hit next. There's a note about confidentiality, and then there's also a note about that participation is voluntary. In Indiana, participation in school surveys must be voluntary by code. So we tell the students, down at the bottom of this, that they don't have to participate. I don't think I've ever had a situation, though, where a school has told us that a student opted out. They know that you're doing the survey to be able to help them, and they do it. So, okay, so the kids put in their survey code, and then on the goal survey, when they're taking that survey, the first thing that they're asked is the contact information. So their name, their parents' names, their email addresses. We're asking questions that we can use in the student list generator. Remember, these are only, I'm going to go back up, the goal survey only has future plans and student choices on it. Okay, so we ask them their contact information, then we ask them demographics. That allows you to do the drill down reports. And then we start asking them questions. So this is how the survey is set up for the kids. What do you plan to do after your first year of high school? And then there's just little boxes they can ding. And then, do you have an up-to-date written post-secondary education plan? Yes, no, not sure. So, okay. And then on the root cause survey data, so this is the data that is only released, some of the question sets are only released to the counselors. And on this survey, students log in by putting their code in. Then we do not ask them for contact information or their name or anything that would allow you to identify who the students were when they answer those questions. So they're answering those student demographics so that you can disaggregate the data so that like on the question there's a question about being stressed. You'll know if your boys are more stressed than your girls, or if your 12th graders are more stressed than your 10th graders. So we have to ask the student demographic questions. And then we go right into the guidance questions. Do you have a way to keep track of your assignments or deadlines? Yes, no, not sure. So they just, fly through those questions. Student assistance questions, and again, these are optional. Yes, no, not sure. Which of the following make it difficult for you to succeed at school? Perception of the counselors, yes, no, not sure, or prefer not to answer. On the previous one, the student assistance questions, there's a prefer not to answer choice on that one too. Okay, that's it. I'm going to do a real quick walkthrough of the online system, and then we'll close. So I'm in the process page in the online system. I got there by clicking process and then making sure the foundations tab was highlighted. I'm going to scroll down to the data collection. I'm going down to the bottom third of that where it says watch student survey video. That's what we're doing right now. Review survey questions. We're in the process of updating those questions. So down the road, definitely before you give the survey, this will be hot and you'll be able to look at the questions. Review the survey time needed. We'll make some minor adjustments to the slide that I just showed you, but I would plan on the survey time that I just shared with you. Then collect the student survey data. If I click here, I get the teacher instructions. If I click here on the input, this is where I'm going to set up the survey. This school, demo school, the survey's already been set up. When you come in for the first time, none of these codes will be here. You'll click enter, and none of the codes will be here, and the computer will ask you to click a box to indicate which survey question sets you want to include. As soon as you've saved on that page, then the survey codes will appear for you. And then there's also, we just kind of gave you a little set of instructions down here, different steps to do to get ready to give the survey. One nice thing is that as you survey students, this will give you a report, an up-to-date real-time report on the percentage of students that have surveyed in your building. So the survey is not yet open, so this is not yet available, but as your students start the survey, you'll see what percentage have surveyed. Okay. So that's collecting student survey data. That's how you set it up right there. And then in the next column, I want to show you, this is where you get the data out. So that I'm clicking on the report icon. You'd pick the year, you'd pick the grade level that you want data for, and then here are all of the different reports. So here's the summary report, the grade level drill down, a gender drill down, race and ethnicity, lunch program, 21st century scholars, IEP status, parental college, typical grades. So you can drill down any of the question sets with that. Notice that the student assistance questions, the counselor perception questions also will be yellow. That information is not available to the public. That's why these are yellow. It's just available to the counselors. And then there's two other tools here I wanted to show you. One is create a student group. When I go into there, let's say that your school is really focusing on academic achievement gains for third grade males. You would click on 3 to 5. You'd say 3 to 7. On the previous page, I've already clicked on third grade, so I'm going to say male here, or I could say free reduced lunch males in third grade. Third grade is clicked on the previous screen. So you can create your own student group, and again, with your school improvement plan, this might be very helpful to when you're looking at reason why certain students are not achieving at the same rate as their peers. Okay, so there's that report, and then here's the student list generator. The one thing I wanted to show you on this is that when I click on that, I get a little note that says that this student list generator is only available to educators from the school that you've put into the online system. So we know the computer knows which of your steering team members are educators. Their names will appear here. And you'll say, okay, the person that's going to use this student list generator is David Green. And I'm sorry, let's go with Amy Dramming. And then you'd click send an email. And that will give Amy an email that gives her access to the student list generator. We really wanted to protect that so that only the people who were in the schools who had the authority to use the student list generator were using it. So, okay. Okay, so that's the reports. And let me go back real quickly. So when you have surveyed 95% of your students and you're ready for us to check you off on that, submit this to us, and then we'll go in just to verify that you've surveyed 95% and we're all good, and then you'll get a meets criteria status over here. And then finally, we need to obtain counselor permission to share the perceptions data. Again, we want to really respect privacy. So I'm going to download that sheet, and we'll just go in and take a look at that. So basically, it's saying that by signing below, I give ASA permission to release my aggregated student responses to the student perceptions of the counselor. So this is because if there are 10 or more counselors in your building, we wouldn't need this sheet, but almost all the schools that we work with have fewer than 10 counselors, and we don't want a counselor to be in a situation where people can say, oh, without the counselor's permission, where people would be able to say, oh, look, there's only one counselor in the building and the kids are saying that the counselor doesn't care about them, well, that's that counselor. So so we really would like to have permission from the counselor to release the data to the steering team. So and again, this perceptions data is not available to the public. It's just available to the school. So, okay, and then one other word on this. One of the best school counseling programs that I have ever worked with, the first time they did this survey, all of their students said that the counselors didn't care about them. And it was a fabulous program. It was an award-winning program. And it broke the counselors' hearts that the kids said that about them. So the first thing the counselors did was they got their heads together and they said, is this true? Are we being honest with ourselves that we really care about kids when, the kids are saying, maybe we need to just reflect a little bit. Do we care about kids? And they decided, yeah, we care about kids. And then the next question became, well, why aren't the kids saying that we care about them? Why don't the kids know that? And then they started thinking about how problematic that would be, that if the kids don't think that the counselors care about them, there's no way the kids are going to come in with a social emotional issue. So what they decided to do, part of their redesigning school counseling plan, was to really work on that perception. And they finally decided that what was happening, they put together a lot of focus groups with the kids, and what they finally figured out was happening was that the counselors were talking so much about how busy they were that the kids all thought that the counselors were too busy to talk to them. And so what they did was they just changed that perspective, that message. And every time kids came in, they would say, sure, I've got time to see you, thinking to themselves, hey, I've got a pile of work on my desk. But they didn't want the kids to feel that they were too busy for them. So, and they changed it. A couple of years later, the kids were, this data really changed. So yeah, so if there's a perception issue, our assumption is that you care about kids, counselors care about kids, or why would they be school counselors? So, but if there's a perception issue about your knowledge or your caring or the goals that you have for kids, we definitely want to know that. So, and I would think you would want to know that so you could change it. So, okay, so we just need you to give us permission to share. And same thing with your principal so that everybody's on board. And then going back to the online system, after you've got that filled out, then you're just going to confirm to us that you have this release signed by the counselors and just save it. And then once you've confirmed that to us, then just submit to us so that we know that that's taken care of. And that is it. So that is the third part of the data collection, is the survey. The data is the surveys have to be in between, you'll do the survey between January 2nd and January 29th. That January 29th day is firm because right after that we're going to be meeting with you to talk about your next council meeting, and we're going to ask you to bring this data to the table for our training so that we can start pawing through that data and finding the messages that are in it. So, okay, that sounds good. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to call us. We know that we're covering so much information right now that chances are you are going to have questions. So please call. And thank you for watching this video, and thank you for participating in redesigning school counseling. Thanks, everyone.